I was driving around downtown when I heard my stomach grumble since I hadn't eaten anything after breakfast, so I stopped for a quick snack near a burger outlet. After safely parking my car, I walked inside, scanned the area, and went to sit on the empty seat in a corner. As I checked out the menu, I found a combo meal that was on discount, and looking at how I was a little short on money at the time, I ordered it. My order number was called within 7 minutes, so I went ahead, took the tray from the counter, and came back to my table to eat. As I was exiting the place after finishing my meal, I saw a poster on the wall on the opposite side of the road through its glass door that said, "Change your misfortunes into a fortune overnight." I couldn't help my laugh looking at it, thinking it was some bullshit they had to put there while I was walking out of the outlet. When I reached my apartment, I noticed there was a blackout, so I turned my phone's flashlight to look around. I checked all the switches to see if they were off, only to find them on. So I sulked on the couch and started waiting for the electricity to come back. But when the hour went by in the dark, I went out to check if the fuse was working properly, and to my surprise, it was missing. I called my landlord to ask what was going on, but instead his wife picked up the phone and started shouting at me, "We're not giving you anything until you pay the rent on time. Better clear all your dues and the water bill along with it, or else your water supply will be cut off." I stared at the phone for a few minutes until she hung up the call, wanting to call back and shout at her about how this apartment was nothing but a garbage can, but I didn't do anything and went straight to the bathroom. After taking a cold shower, I went to the kitchen to eat something. A bad stench hit my nose as soon as I entered the kitchen. I flashed the light in the direction where it felt strong, only to realize that I had forgotten to put the vegetables I bought in the refrigerator before going away for a week. I guess I forgot to give you my introduction. My name is Henry Keith, and I'm a psychology major student. It was my final year of college, and after moving out from my parents' house, I was living on my own. I worked a few part-time jobs to pay bills since it was not easy living alone, but no matter how hard I worked, my bills were always due. And if that was not enough of the mess I was in, I found out last week that my girlfriend cheated on me with one of those rich guys who can afford Mercedes. And trust me, this guy did own one. Everything revolves around money these days. Even girls run in the arms of a rich brat over a guy like me who had nothing, not even food now. Looking at how it was no use wallowing in self-pity, I went to my bedroom to sleep. The next morning, I woke up late for no reason, and as I was brushing my teeth, I remembered having an interview scheduled for a new part-time job. I got ready in a rush, took my documents, and headed outside, locking the apartment's door on my way out. The next train to my destination was to leave in about 10 minutes, so I ran toward the subway, which was approximately 900 meters distance from the place. Luckily, I reached there on time and was able to board the train. I would still call it a coincidence that I saw the same poster from the burger outlet in the hands of the lady sitting next to me, but it made me curious, so I asked her, "What's the deal with this? Is this about a magic show or something?" She looked at me for suddenly asking a question, looking around her to see if it was her I was talking to. And upon realizing that it was, she replied, "I'm going there to find out. You see, I'm facing a lot of misfortunes lately and I'm tired of it. I'd like it if my situation could be reversed." I asked again, "Do you believe in such things?" To which she answered, "Yeah, and why shouldn't I? If this is the only hope I can grab onto, I'll gladly give it anything for it." It was at that moment it made sense to me too. That woman's words had hit me, and I finally knew what I needed to do. I asked the lady if I could take a picture of that poster, to which she nodded yes, and after taking a snap, I went to the interview. My interview did go well, and I got the job. The pay they offered me was good too in comparison to all the other jobs I'd been doing, and because of its distance, I had to take the subway daily. With the advance money that I got from my work, I was able to pay a few bills and finally got the electricity back. But with that came the downside. Managing between that job and college started to become harder because of the distance. Looking at how it would all go to waste if I were to fail my exams, I tried and changed that. As I'd already made up my mind, I woke up rather early in a good mood the next morning. With the picture of that poster on my phone, I went straight to the subway and boarded the train, thinking about the address that was written in there, which was looking not too far from my workplace. After finishing my shift, I went straight there to check if the things written on the poster were true or not. I was surprised to see the same lady I met on the subway there, so I approached her asking, "Ma'am, did you get your problem solved? Is that why you're here today?" She turned back toward me and said with a broad smile on her face, "Yes, it did. I'm in a much better place than I was before." She questioned me about my reason for being there, so I told her I was just curious to see if this works. And looking at the long queue outside the fortune teller's place, it seemed true. I waited for my turn, and when I finally got in, I saw a person sitting on the other side of that huge table. Tarot cards were lying in the middle of the table, a crystal ball was on its side, and lots of stones and beads were put in small bowls. The person on the other end, whom I assumed was the fortune teller, was wearing a long silk dress with a veil to hide the face, but even then, I could see that it was a man. I sat in the chair that was placed on this side of the table facing him, and a woman walked in to give me a piece of paper that looked like a menu. There was a price written on everything. I looked again carefully just to be sure, and the basic fee for fortune telling was $10, so I pointed toward that. The lady went to the fortune teller and whispered something in his ear before retreating. The man cleared his throat and said, "You wish to earn money to solve your monetary problems." I was shocked to hear it, because I hadn't even introduced myself yet, but what he said was indeed true. He continuously tried to make his voice deep and heavy, but what he was saying was exactly what I wanted to hear, so I was impressed by those words. After telling him everything, he asked me to sit closer, but there was still this lingering doubt in the back of my mind. As I sat near him, I could sense that something was off about him. I knew this felt too good to be real, so I pulled his veil just to see what he looked like, and being a psychology student, I knew a thing or two about how to read people. As I revealed his face, a shock washed all over my face, as he was one of my psychology professors from the first year, Charlie Thompson. He was kicked out of the college for molesting a few female students in the name of offering them free counseling sessions at his home. The situation finally sunk in my mind about what's going on with this fortune-telling fraud over here. Looking at how he was a psychology professor, he offered the best possible solution for their problem, which made it look like some kind of magic. I felt so raged at the point that I immediately grabbed him by the neck and threatened to call the police on him. But then he started begging me while saying that he wasn't able to get a job because his license was revoked after the molestation case, so he had to do something to earn money. And when one day he thought of his plan, he put it into action. I wasn't some fool that would let him go after hearing his pleas, and I knew he wouldn't do anything to me looking at all these people outside. So I cleverly recorded everything and threatened him with that. He started begging and saying he will refund my $10, but I laughed at him and said, "I want you to turn all my misfortunes into fortunes, just as it's written on this poster. Only then would I let you off." He made me sign an agreement that started that I would not leak the information obtained about him, and in exchange, he would give me a part-time job at his place with handsome pay. Upon agreeing to his terms, I started working there. My shifts were short, and my college time wasn't compromised anymore. A few months passed, and I was finally able to save enough money for a down payment to a new apartment, where I moved in after graduation. I found a new job as a counselor after quitting Professor Charlie's place, or should I say, fortune teller's place. I never contacted him after that, and though his recorded confession is still in my old cell phone, I'm never really going to use it. But maybe I will. You never know when I could use it, so I'm keeping it, just in case. Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so. There have been many flights that have gone missing over the past years. While some of them were found eventually, some were never found. Yes, we have all heard about missing flights, but have you ever heard of an entire airline going missing to the extent that no one even remembers that they existed? Well, I have worked for such an airline, That one day was wiped off from existence. I had worked for many airlines for the past 12 years, from operations agent to regional sales manager. Everything was going pretty decently until I received a better job offer at TED Airlines, a new company that was about to launch its first flights. They wanted me to take the job as sales manager with far better pay than I was getting at my last company. So I didn't find any harm in accepting their offer and signed the employment contract. I resigned from the company I was working for and joined TED Airline. The first 2 days were pretty normal at work. I loved it, the employees were great, and the coffee was good. I even made a friend, which was quite rare for me the way I am, kind of introverted. It was the third day. I woke up pretty early, made breakfast and lunch, and got ready. I woke up my husband, told him that I was heading out, and gave him a kiss goodbye as I always did. My morning mood was pretty good these days compared to the ones I used to have while working in my past company. As I reached the company, I parked my car and headed toward the elevators. As I was waiting for the elevators to arrive, I saw two new faces of men who were dressed up casually like all the other employees. As I mentioned earlier that this was a brand new company, which hasn't even launched their flights yet, and they were still hiring their employees, I thought maybe these two were either here for an interview round or recruits like me. So I waved hello to them with a smile and then went into the elevator. I pressed the button to the 5th floor where my office was and waited for the elevator while humming my favorite Taylor Swift song, The Man. There were fewer people on the floor in comparison to the last 2 days. I thought it must be because of the morning meeting that was supposed to be held for a different department. So I ignored it and walked back to the captain to revise the reports that I had to present to the director in 2 hours. I was going to the washroom when I saw a few men entering the floor, including the two I saw earlier this morning. I thought that crossed my mind was, wow, they're hiring good. After that, I went to the washroom and I heard a scream, so I sneaked a peek. An employee was lying in front of the bathroom bleeding, but that wasn't where the scream came from. It was from the other side of the floor. That was when I heard the bleeding girl saying, "Run," right before she died in front of my eyes. I went back inside the bathroom and locked it from inside. My breathing started to feel heavy. My entire body began trembling and tingling, and my heart started to pound like crazy. The feeling I was having was closer to a panic attack because of the terror I was feeling in that moment. I could not believe there was a dead employee outside the bathroom, and I did not know what was going on outside or when I should get out. The screams and noises started to fade and slowly died down. But I could only wait for about half an hour in there because I felt like I needed to go to the hospital if this fear stayed any longer than it had. So I slowly opened the bathroom door and sneakily looked around to see if anyone was there. But no one was there. I walked with quiet footsteps and stumbled across something only to find another dead body. It was the guy I had made friends with on my first day. I put my hands over my mouth to stop myself from screaming when I saw the rest of the floor filled with dead bodies from the rest of the employees. All the blood on the floor made my blood run cold. It was so hard to stop myself from screaming. I ran toward the chairman's office to inform him about the situation outside, looking at how he never leaves his office after arriving. He might know what was going on. The glass door of his office was shattered, and there was a man inside, holding the chairman by his throat. It was one of the same guys I saw near the elevator this morning, and I was lucky he didn't take notice of me when I saw him taking out a knife and then stabbing the chairman multiple times until he was dead. After that, he gouged out his eyes, took a picture of the corpse, sent it to someone, and then put the eyes in a weird-looking small pocket bag. I couldn't watch it any longer and risk my life staying here, so before he could turn around and see me, I ran with my life. Instead of taking the elevator, I ran through the stairs, and as I was climbing down, my breathing kept getting heavier and heavier. I somehow managed to exit the building, but my body kept trembling and shaking, and I started getting cold sweats. That was when I fell, and I lost consciousness. I woke up in a hospital, and a stranger was sitting by my bed. Doctors told me that I had a heart attack, but I was lucky because this person took me to the emergency room when he found me. Otherwise, I could have died. When they asked me if I remembered anything before passing out, flashes from earlier today started to appear, and I started screaming. They injected something into my wrist, and I fell asleep. Then I woke up. I was under the effects of medication, but I remembered everything so clearly, and I told them everything exactly as I remembered it happening in my workplace. "I'm sorry, what address did you say your company was?" The man who had brought me here asked in confusion. "It's the new Ted airline that was about to launch, and it's right where you found me," I said. "I'm sorry, but I think you may be hallucinating, because there's no such airline, and there's only an IT company where I found you." As I heard this, I started panicking and screaming again. As I was getting restrained by the nurses, I couldn't help but notice an evil smirk on his face right before everything went dark, and I lost consciousness.
I believe it was the summer before I started high school. My mom's cleaning company was short a maid or two. She figured it made more sense to make me work for my money rather than just hand over a bit every time I asked. Maybe she thought it would teach me the value of $1. I'm not sure. Whatever her motivations, I was hired to cover the phones. This was a test to see if I could handle the workload. I must have passed because I was moved over to cleaning once the school year began. 5 days a week after school and all day Saturdays, I followed her and the other girls around town cleaning people's homes and offices. This routine continued for 4 years of high school and college. At the end of it all, I had a business degree and a 50% piece in the company. Another 10 years would pass, and as Mom would step further away from the day-to-day running of the operations, I would take on more responsibility. Until one day when she handed me her keys and wished me good luck. The business became mine, and with it, all its headaches and heartaches. I never completely stopped going out on jobs. The work kept me fit and in good standing with my clients. If I told you I enjoyed the actual job, I'd definitely be lying. However, by the time I left high school, I'd become almost disconnected from it. After 20 years of cleaning toilets and kitchens, I figured I'd seen it all and nothing could ever get to me. That was until the call for the Pearson job. The man who called sounded like a kind and amiable old man, if not a bit spacey. It took a moment or two for him to get to his point, and it sounded like a run-of-the-mill house cleaning gig. What I saw when I arrived sticks with me to this day. I was met at the door by the old gentleman and led to a bedroom. The acrid scent coming from the room punched me in the gut and caused me to retch. While fighting the urge, I balked at the horrifying image before me. It appeared as if a tub full of blood had been splattered all about the room. The bed was by far the worst, soaked in an almost purple-tinted goo. One wall appeared to have a vast spray of blood and gray matter coating it. The horror of it overtook me, and I ran across the hall into a bathroom and barfed up my lunch. It took a few minutes to compose myself. I stormed from the bathroom and confronted the man about what I had just seen. He hung his head for a moment, at first mumbling an apology, then looking up toward me, quietly allowing a tear to fall from the corner of his eye. "I'm sorry, young lady. I know it's an awful sight. I should have warned you, but I was afraid you'd turn around and leave. My grandson..." He took a long, ragged breath and began again. "My grandson took his life this morning. He did it in that room. I can't even bear to go in there. I know it must be shocking, a shocking sight to see, but I didn't know who else to call. My insurance won't pay for it, and the other company I called, the one the police gave me the card for, they wanted far more than I could afford. I knew my wife had used your company many years ago, and I liked it. I guess I hoped you could help me." I wasn't sure what to say. I felt horrible for this poor man, but this type of work was way beyond my ability, not to mention my comfort level. Crime scene cleanup companies made more because they had to deal with bloodborne diseases and pathogens and had the proper chemicals to dispose of bodily fluids properly. We continued to stare at one another, unsure of what to say. His eyes were now filled with tears. It was obvious what I had to do. I asked the gentleman for the cleaner's card. I spoke to them a moment and hung up. Before I could get the words out, I began to get choked up myself. I cleared my throat and began once more. "It's all taken care of, sir. Your family's been a good client in the past, and it's the least I could do." At that moment, I didn't actually remember the family, but it seemed an easy way to explain what I was doing. Although right that second I wasn't sure why I was doing it. "You don't have to worry about it. Consider it a thank you for the loyalty to our company." The old man's eyes lit up when I said this. His face was now one big, wet mess. "I don't know how to thank you, young lady. I didn't think there were kind people like yourself around anymore." He lunged upon me and wrapped me in a massive arms. I did the same, and we stood there for the next minute, locked in our mournful embrace. In an instant, we released one another, and I bid him goodbye.